We begin tonight with new information out of the Holyoke Soldiers Home. Western Mass News has learned 6 Holyoke Soldiers Home staff members have tested positive for COVID-19. Good Thursday evening, everyone. Welcome to Western Mass News at 6. I'm Chris Pisano.
And I'm Jordyn Jagalinzer. This comes as outside visits from loved ones have been stopped until August 11th. Western Mass News reporter Audrey Russo joins us live outside the home with the latest. Audrey?
State officials say 6 employees were considered clinically recovered and had the COVID-19 earlier during the outbreak. Now, earlier this week, a veteran began showing symptoms of COVID-19, and that triggered full house testing of all of the veteran residents and all of the employees of the home. Now, that is when it was discovered that these 6 employees who were considered clinically recovered had once again tested positive for COVID-19, but were asymptomatic. What little of the Holyoke Soldiers Home that had opened back up to the world is snapped back shut this week after a clinically recovered veteran began showing COVID-19 symptoms once again. Outside visits were canceled, and that resident was transferred to a hospital and tested positive for COVID-19. State officials say full house testing was performed. Families were notified of canceled visits and increased infection control actions being taken. But those families received another message from the home Thursday morning. While no other vets tested positive for the virus, 6 clinically recovered staff members did. In a statement to Western Mass News, state officials say, quote, 6 asymptomatic staff who had previously tested positive but were clinically recovered again tested positive and were immediately sent home out of an abundance of caution.
It's going to be a challenge to get people to go and commit to working at that facility. So that's going to be a long-term rebuilding of that facility.
A former superintendent of the home, Paul Barabani, spoke out during a congressional hearing Wednesday about the 76 veterans who died after testing positive earlier in the spring. He fears another deadly outbreak in the home is looming over the horizon and worries there won't be enough staff to help.
I am not convinced that they are prepared to deal with a second wave. They better call the National Guard now and put them on orders, because if it happens, I don't see how Holyoke will be prepared.
In the message sent to families, the current interim superintendent, Val Liptak, says the latest CDC guidance is being followed, including the isolation of asymptomatic people for 10 days after their positive test. Now, state officials say that they're hoping outdoor visits with loved ones can resume on August 11th or earlier if the circumstances call for it. And there is some good news on the veteran who began having COVID-19 symptoms and was sent to the hospital. We're told that now, as of Wednesday, his most recent COVID-19 test has come back negative. Reporting live in Holyoke, Audrey Russo for Western Mass News.
Audrey, thank you for that live report. Now here's a look at today's numbers of COVID-19 cases. So far, the state reports 304 new cases with a total number of 109,400 in the Bay State. There were 15 more deaths today. The statewide death toll now stands at 8,375.
The 2020 census is underway. Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Galvin, made a stop in Springfield today to make sure that Western Mass is not, in his words, the tail of the dog.
He says it's up to every resident to make sure they're counted. Beth Ward joins us live from home with why he says this census is more important now than ever before. Beth?
Well, Chris and Jordyn, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, says that Bill Galvin says that this part of the state is often underrepresented in the census. He said that could mean millions of dollars in lost revenue from the federal government when it comes to things like infrastructure, even representation in Congress.
The 2020 federal census is underway, meaning every person in every state in the U.S. must be counted. The data collected determines federal funding for every community for things like fire departments, schools, roads and highways, health clinics, even the number of representatives in Congress. Bottom line, the more people you have in a city or town, the more money or representation you get.
The information you're being asked to is basic information. It's the people in your home, the number of people in your home. It is not personal information. It is not Social Security information. It is not citizenship.
Secretary of the Commonwealth William Galvin made a stop in Springfield to push the importance of filling out the census, saying too often Western Mass has been underrepresented.
I am committed to making sure that Western Massachusetts is not shortchanged. And the history here has been that you have been. The fact of the matter is whether it's on funding or anything else, Western Mass has often been the tail on the dog, and we don't want that to occur again.
Residents can respond online, by phone, or by mail. Door-to-door efforts are now underway as well.
Now we're down to the people that have yet to respond. And people say, well, I don't want anyone coming to my door under these circumstances. There's a way to avoid that. You can do it by telephone now.
He tells Western Mass News the clock is ticking, only 10 weeks left.
Understand how critical it is for Springfield, for their families, for their future, that they respond to this census. These are the numbers for the next 10 years. So, and we can't change them. Once they're in, they're in.
Now, in the last census, Western Mass lost a U.S. representative in Congress. 2 were combined into 1 because, again, we were underrepresented. Now, the deadline is October 31st. Reporting live from home, Beth Ward, Western Mass News. Back to you.
All right, Beth, thank you for that report. And Western Mass News is your school authority. The deadline for school districts across the state to submit their 3 reopening plans to the state is tomorrow. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requiring all districts submit an in-person plan, a remote learning plan, and a hybrid option for both. Governor Charlie Baker touching upon the reason for all these options today in his daily coronavirus briefing.
You know, from our point of view, the pediatric community, many of the child welfare folks, many of the folks in the special ed world want to see schools reopen. I think that's in the best interest of kids. But part of the reason we asked folks to develop 3 plans for this is because it's going to be very hard to tell where not just the Commonwealth in entirety is, but where regions of the Commonwealth and communities of the Commonwealth are as we head into the fall.
The Southwick-Tolland Granville Regional School District, as well as Agawam and Springfield, are all holding committee meetings tonight to discuss their plans. We'll be digging deeper into their plans for the fall, starting tonight at 10 on Fox 6.
An increasing number of NFL players are opting out of the 2020 season due to the coronavirus pandemic.
6 players have opted out right here in New England, but as of now, the NFL and other sports are continuing their seasons regardless. Western Mass News reporter Kayla Burton joins us live in studio after speaking with a former Patriots, Red Sox, and Bruins team doctor who tells us how these seasons could play out. Kayla.
Well, Chris and Jordyn, the NFL just announced that 66 players across the league have tested positive for the coronavirus. Now, none of them were members of the New England Patriots. I spoke with Dr. Thomas Gill, who is confident the NFL season will start, but he is concerned it will experience similar problems Major League Baseball is facing right now amid the coronavirus pandemic.
I think if football can do symptom checklists, temperature checklists before players come into the stadium, I think if they can, separate once they're in the locker rooms, maybe have 2 locker rooms for the team rather than 1, basically prevent COVID from making its way in. And if they can implement an in-season COVID IR.
And despite these problems, Dr. Gill tells Western Mass News if there is any sport standing a chance to have a full season, baseball is definitely one of them, simply because it's a sport where players can socially distance and wear face coverings for the majority of the time. Now, he says the layout of the field being a diamond is even beneficial, whereas football players tackle and will be coming in contact with each other. Now, while Dr. Gill believes football will start up the 2020 season, certain factors need to be taken seriously for the league to last.
The problem comes, as we've seen in Miami, that each team is going to mirror the city in which they live. And right now, Florida, Texas, Arizona, all hotspots for the COVID-19. I think you're going to start to see other teams that live in those areas have the same problems as Miami.
About even implementing a COVID IR meaning a COVID-like injured reserve list. So if players test positive for the coronavirus, they quarantine for 14 days and must test negative before taking the field again. He says this way players would be taken care of in the proper way, as well as keep their job and ultimately keep the NFL season going. He says with the right care and approach, this is possible. And again, for those just tuning in, 66 players have tested positive for the coronavirus as the league, but in terms of the Patriots, 0 players have tested positive so far. Now, coming up later tonight on Western Mass News, we'll have more on what Dr. Gill is suggesting in order for players to remain healthy and for there to be a full NFL season. For now in studio, Kayla Burton, Western Mass News.
Kayla, thanks. The American Hockey League announcing a revised start date for the upcoming 2020-2021 season, pushing it back to December 4th of this year, meaning a delay for our very own Springfield Thunderbirds. The season usually starts in early October. Last year's season was canceled early due to the pandemic. The AHL tells Western Mass News further details for the upcoming regular season have yet to be determined.
And for more coverage on the coronavirus emergency as it develops, log on to our free Western Mass News streaming app.
New at 6, the Hampden County DA's office and Holyoke Police announcing an arrest in connection to a Wednesday afternoon shooting right next to the Holyoke Mall. 19-year-old Skyzen Encarnacion is facing murder charges. He turned himself in this morning to Springfield Police. Police say they received 2 calls Wednesday afternoon, one closer to 6 for 2 women fighting at the mall. By the time police got there, the 2 had left the scene. Police then receiving multiple reports of shots fired closer to 6:15. They then learned the victim, 23-year-old Carlos Rumeli, was transported privately to Bay State Medical Center where he succumbed to his injuries.
State and local police are investigating 2 robberies that they believe to be connected. The first occurring there, you're watching on your screen, at the Granville Country Store between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on Tuesday. Granville police say 3 suspects broke into the store and then took off with the ATM. And a similar break-in happened at the Shell station in Westfield on Southwick Road. Police say 5 individuals participated in that one. 2 cash registers were stolen, as well as miscellaneous tobacco products. Anyone with information or footage of the surrounding areas should contact Granville Police.